Adrian, your journey into the world of mazes is both unique and fascinating. Can you share the spark or story that set you on this path?
Well, when I was a boy, I created a maze in my father's garden down by the river in Bournemouth. And after that, I went into industry and did lots of predictable things. But all the time, I had this desire to create more mazes, so I started visiting other ones. And I suddenly realised how few there were. And I suddenly thought to myself, wouldn't it be great to go all over the world building mazes like a kind of Johnny Appleseed and create mazes everywhere? And so finally the moment came, and I left the big world of industry and started building mazes, and that was over 40 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. Could you share the story behind your TED Talks presentation last year? How did this opportunity come about, and what impact has it had on your journey and creative philosophy?
Well, I'd given one TED Talk before in America about the pursuit of happiness, but then I was part of the Tapestry board. Simona Baciui is in Romania, and she said, why don't you come and give a TED Talk in Romania? So I did. I came over to Cluj, and she happened to know all the right people, and I was invited, and I gave my talk. It was all about aspects of humanity and fulfillment and so on. And so I gave my talk, and like the TED Talks require an immense amount of preparation. I mean, months ahead, you're constantly building and improving it. And then it becomes terribly intense because you've so over prepared that you have to almost relax and just let it happen. And what happens in the end, you just have to remember to keep it loud, slow and distinct, and hope your enthusiasm carries the day. Because in the end, it's one enormous big sort of emotional sort of blur of everything at once. And if you've got good pictures that carry you through, good photographs, that's great. You've got to have a very clear vision of your message. And in preparation, it gets really interesting until you have too many things. So you have to cut out a complete chunk of it to get back to the central thing, because you have maximum 18 minutes, and you absolutely have to stick to that. And it's a great discipline because it forces you to get to the point.
So how did this come about?
I'm a member of the Tapestry International Board, and we have members all over the world. And we're all working on various aspects of well-being and mental health. So when there was this TED Talk coming up in Cluj, last June in 2023, it seemed an ideal opportunity for me to give a TED Talk on my experiences of putting large numbers of people together in mazes. Well, one of the board members was actually in Cluj as the director of the Transylvanian College, and so she put me in touch and urged them to consider me. And so I got invited, which was lovely, and that was a very exciting experience for me to go to Cluj, see what Simona and her team were doing there, and also interact with the various delegates who came to the TED conference. Whenever you are asked to give a TED Talk, do not imagine for a moment it's a light task. The preparation takes months. You have to think very clearly what you're trying to say. The more you refine it and you mull it over and you talk with other people over the days and weeks, the more the question crystallizes, but then it doesn't, and then it does, and then it branches out, and you have to cut bits off so that you can keep your 18-minute, very strictly controlled 18-minute argument. It's totally logical, so you can carry your audience. And then you make sure you've got all the illustrations that absolutely help unveil this in exactly the right order with the right emphasis. And then you practice it. And then you probably over-practice it. And then just on the night before, you meet the other speakers, and then someone tells you some terribly amusing story about someone else who did one. And then before you know it, that throws you into disarray and sort of getting any sleep. The whole, and then when you're on there, it's just, other people, great, they go on and they go on, and suddenly it's you up the steps and in real time, no second takes. This is live, this is for real. There's 2,000 people, the cameras are rolling from 6 directions, and the clock has started, and away you go. And that was really, an incredible sort of statement of one of the things I've achieved in my life.
Great. And what impact has it had on your journey and creative philosophy?
Well, I don't think you can ever intensely attack something for several months and try and keep to the point and stay in focus and develop an argument without it being an important rung on your journey in life up the ladder. It's true whatever you do, whether you undertake to do something or belong to some group for a while, inevitably it's a significant step in your life journey. And the talk I gave in Cluj in June 2023 was no exception.
So that was, your talk in Cluj must have been a whirlwind of emotions. And so could you walk us through what was going through your mind as you looked into the audience?
Well, it's very exciting. I mean, there's nothing like the human chemistry of standing up in front of, 2,000 people. Every one of them's made the effort to travel to be there just to listen to you for 18 minutes, and it, and they want to be with you and cheer you along, but you've got to jolly well give them something worth cheering for, and so there's a kind of win us over kind of feeling. Of course, in a way, they're just black, heads disappearing into the darkness all the way up in all directions, and you don't see any in particular. But at the same time, you're very conscious of it, and anything that hits the button, the reaction is instantaneous and everywhere, which is terrific. So once you get one or two of those, you suddenly feel they're behind me, and then that buoys you up further, which is great.
So how did TIEF contribute to your TED in Cluj opportunity, and how vital are such organisations in connecting creators with larger stages and audiences?
Well, in terms of TIEF generally, I think it's on a personal basis. The different board members have, over the last few years, been a tremendous source of encouragement and support, and it's a two-way relationship. So that's it's a very powerful group of people who share a common ideal and a common ethos, and I think that is its great strength. And we cover from Cameroon to Poland, Romania, England, the States, all over the place, different academic disciplines as well. So that's its strength. It's our common purpose is to make a significant impact in terms of things like young people and mental health, and the incredible trauma that occurs when children and their families are displaced, whether internally or by climate change or by conflict or any one of those things. The surge in need to help overcome the distress, especially among young people and teens, is so important. And that, I guess, is what our principal objective is.
So you spoke passionately about intense acts of creation. Could you share more about what this concept means?
Yes, I was thinking that in terms of a career, people look back on the year and what were the highlights, and often it's, after 47 weeks of routine work in the office, it's those weeks on holiday with the family or on an expedition or a journey or a change of scene that jump out at the end of the year. And in the same way in a career, you think, of all the things I've done in 20, 30, 40 years, what are the things that really jump out? The half dozen things that made a real difference. And my feeling was that quite often it's when you do something which is intensely creative, absolutely stretches every single sinew of trying to get something absolutely right, absolutely superb, absolutely appropriate, absolutely tune in with the people you're working with that gives them maximum fulfillment, and vice versa towards me. And together, we're absolutely beaming with joy towards each other as we come out having achieved something wonderful. And anyone who's ever put together a theatrical performance and it's the last night and you did it, or a film and finally it's a wrap, the end of a concert or something, the tremendous sense of, yes, we all did it and it was superb and we all know it, is intense act of creation. And what I've been privileged with is hundreds of times people are wanting to create a maze, which is a very exotic and imaginative thing, and it's in their landscape. They know nothing much about it before we meet. They have ideas, I have ideas, and I give them, I hope, the freedom to absolutely let loose their own interests and excitements. And then I harness perhaps aspects of that, and I suggest also this, and together we start building up a consensus. And to start with, I have no exact idea how it's going to come out, and nor do they. But before we're finished, we've all created something none of us could have quite imagined at the outset. And in my view, that's a great outcome, and in my view, a great shared intense act of creation. And for me, I have the privilege, this is happening dozens of times a year, for each of these people whose lives I touch, it may be one of the 2 or 3 most memorable creative acts in their lives. And every time, and they tell me so, I'm absolutely thrilled for them. And I'm not boasting that, I've done that more often. It doesn't come into that at all. Every single one is a unique experience of a shared group on its own terms. And if we get the privilege to do that more than once in our lives, that's great. If 3 or 4 times, that's great. I'm just reporting from my life and my experience how joyful it has made my existence, and I commend it, and it's wonderful to do that, and it's something. It wouldn't it be wonderful if more people could quite sincerely say, forget about money, forget about everything else, but I think I have the best job in the world. And I have met several people who feel that way in a totally different fields of endeavour, totally different criteria, but they all know they have absolutely stretched and squeezed excellence to the utter humanly possible limit.
So was there one moment, perhaps a reaction or feedback, that made you realise the profound impact your mazes could have had on somebody?
It's quite surprising. I fondly thought to start with it was more kind of horticultural project, a landscape project. It's intriguing because it's got puzzlement and things are hidden, and we always like to explore things which are out of sight and we're not allowed to explore. And of course we want to explore. But then I started discovering that when we took it to different countries, different situations, different groups of people were coming in. I mean, around the North American farms where we have lots of corn mazes, the sort of people who go to a farm experience on a farm way out of town for a couple of hours drive, they're somewhat different mindset, especially if Americans in the Midwest, they have a different mindset to those on the East Coast. But all of them have a robust and cheerful and outdoor can-do sort of mentality, which is somewhat different to people who go around the rather manicured gardens of the National Trust in England, which very nice, but it's different. And they're looking for different things, and they're thinking differently, and their families are interacting differently. And what's so exciting is that there's the common strands of feeling a shared sense of adventure, a shared accomplishment, and they're coming out feeling better about each other, and they're walking tall. I mean, you can almost feel that, standing another half inch higher and feeling, yes, aren't I? Yes, that was great.
So, having had that effect on someone, what must have been a pinnacle moment? How did it feel in your TED Talk to convey your life's work to such an engaged and diverse audience?
Well, I hope that these experiences I'm describing, they would have come across hopefully in my words and the tone of my voice and my enthusiasm. And I think on one or two occasions I dipped into a very brief anecdote which would illustrate what I was referring to by these intense acts of creation. Those were the bits that are memorable, those are the things that are powerful, and those are the bits we should aspire and aim for. But we all know with all work, the first 50, 60, 70% of it, often tends to be much the same. I mean, whether you could look at somebody and you can't tell if he's a lawyer or an accountant or an architect. Half their time is spent with computers and keystrokes and telephone calls and so on. But for what purpose? Sometimes they're driven by making sure nothing goes wrong, and other people by exploring dramatically to find some new opportunity in the market. They're both using a telephone, but they're doing totally different things with it. So don't focus on what they're doing, focus on what they're in their minds aiming to achieve and the interaction they need with other people to achieve it.
So the creative process is often a roller coaster of emotions. How do you manage the ups and downs and staying true to your vision?
I think if you're going to be true to your creative vocation, you know deep down that if you start compromising, well, that's not the best, but I haven't got enough budgeted hours to do a proper job, so I'll just do a slack job and it'll be okay, and no one will know what it could have been. Once you let that happen, you're losing focus and you're losing sharpness. And I set myself possibly, and this is true of many people, if you give people a job, as long as you do what your supervisor asks you, you've done 100% of what you're required. And it may not be brilliant, and it may not be all of you're capable of, but that's okay. No one's complaining. That's not good enough if you're on your own. I come in self-employed saying, I want to do the very best I can do, and then having spent some time, I will spend half as much time, again, just squeezing and exploring to make it that bit better, to make it perfect, rather than just very good. And to make it perfect as best I can, why do I do it? Because I'm absolutely uncompromising in giving the very finest result I can. I may, for example, say there's two ways of solving this. Both have 55 moves to get to the finish. And the answer is 55 moves. There is no other quicker way than 55 moves. But from a puzzle purist point of view, I might say it would be really good if there's only a unique way to do it in 55 moves, and every other way would take more than 55 moves. And that purist approach is, of course, what some of the great, in this case, puzzle designers in the world and I aspire to. It's a bit slack to have two valid ways, both of which, that's not good enough. You've got to have a unique way. And then everyone can say, there's another way which is also the same distance. So that is an example of how you really set yourself a standard higher than most people would even recognise.
So in this journey of creation and exploration, what is one piece of advice you'd give to others about making a lasting impact?
Well, the first thing is get it built. If you can't take a photograph of it, it's rather difficult to say, well, I did build it, but I never got round to taking a photograph, or some permanent record of that it actually happened, whether it's a concert was held or whatever. So the first thing is you've got to make it marketable so it actually gets built. We can all get bits of paper and squared paper and draw ideas as to what we could put on the front lawn of Buckingham Palace or something, but if it doesn't get built, it's just, well, interesting, but no more. So you actually have to make it built. Therefore, you've got to win the hearts and minds. You've got to do a deal. You've actually got to if you don't own the land yourself, you've got to find the owner. If you haven't got the money, you've got to find someone who's got the money, and it may not be the same person. But finally, you put together a whole group of people so that you've got enough money, you've got enough permission, you've got enough excitement, a desire for it, an end use. I mean, if you build a maze, either it's because you just love having it once a year for the family Easter egg treasure hunt, or maybe you want to open your historic house to the public, in which case you want lots of people to go around it, in which case Are they going to say, I'm so pleased you put the maze in, it's really the best thing you've ever done? Or does it want to be just a kind of, well, I've seen the rose garden, yeah, not really very interesting. Maze much the same. That's not really good, is it? It's got to be absolutely superb. So it's got to deliver what it promised. And part of the pleasure of the owner is, my goodness, the comments I'm getting are so positive. I'm so pleased we put the maze in. And then you have, the real sense of feeling good about it. And I think to get it achieved and get it built, therefore is a good one. But it's got to hit the button, and it's no good being the same as before or seen again. It's got to always, each one, if you like, I like to say unique. I'd say to an owner, whatever you see in the book, you can't have. It's been done before, but whatever I do for you will never be seen again. And to have something unique in your landscape or in your grounds, which is the only one of its kind in the whole world, is a wonderful yes against all the mass-produced cameras, computers, cars, buildings, houses, roads, and everything else that's mass-produced. To have something absolutely superb and unique really appeals to me.